Emma Wilson rushed through the gleaming glass doors of Cole Enterprises, her leather portfolio clutched tightly against her chest. She was already 10 minutes late for the executive presentation, a cardinal sin in the eyes of Alexander Cole, the notoriously punctual CEO who had built a billion-dollar empire on precision and perfection. "Hold the elevator," she called, sprinting across the marble lobby in her Louboutins. A manicured hand shot out to stop the doors. Emma slipped inside, breathless, finding herself face to face with Natalie from HR. "Board meeting?" Natalie asked, eyeing Emma's portfolio. "Worse, one-on-one with Cole about the Singapore merger." Emma tried to steady her breathing as they ascended to the 47th floor. "My sister's having a baby. I had to drop off some things at her apartment this morning and lost track of time." The elevator dinged open. Emma straightened her Armani blazer and strode toward the CEO's corner office, where his assistant Marcus waved her through with a sympathetic glance. Alexander Cole stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his tall frame silhouetted against the city skyline. At 38, he was the youngest CEO in the company's history, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through every lie and weakness. "Ms. Wilson, you're late." "I apologize, Mr. Cole. I have the Singapore projections ready." Emma opened her portfolio on his custom walnut desk, pulling out the presentation she'd spent all weekend perfecting. That's when it happened. "Huh?" Cream-colored silk garment fluttered out from between the pages, landing directly on top of the financial spreadsheets. Emma froze in horror. Her sister's pregnancy underwear, the special support kind she'd picked up that morning, lay exposed on the CEO's desk. Alexander stared at it, one eyebrow raised, his expression unreadable. Emma's face burned. I'm so sorry." "My sister's." Expecting an "Are congratulations in order, Ms. Wilson?" His voice was cool, businesslike. "No, they're not mine. They're my sister's. I was dropping things off at her place this morning." A flicker of something relief crossed his face before his professional mask returned. "I see." He carefully moved the underwear aside with a pen, as if it were a contract amendment. "Perhaps we should focus on Singapore." Emma nodded gratefully, mortification turning her knees to jelly as she took a seat. She couldn't believe she'd just dropped maternity underwear in front of Alexander Cole, the man whose approval determined her future at the company. What she didn't realize then was that this embarrassing mishap would be the catalyst that changed everything between them. Because while Alexander Cole maintained his perfect composure during their meeting, what happened next would shatter the careful boundaries they'd maintained for 2 years. 3 days after the underwear incident, Emma was still cringing whenever her phone rang. She'd managed to avoid Alexander Cole since their meeting, which had actually gone surprisingly well despite her mortifying entrance. "Emma Wilson," she answered, her voice professional despite working late alone in her office. "Ms. Wilson, Alexander Cole." Her stomach dropped. "Mr. Cole, what can I do for you?" "I need you at the Peninsula Hotel, Ballroom B, as soon as possible." Emma glanced at her watch. 9:30 p.m. "Sir, the Singapore investors are here early." "Key Hans. Team arrived tonight instead of tomorrow. They want to discuss your projections immediately." "I'll be there in 20 minutes," she replied, already gathering her files. When her Uber pulled up to the Peninsula's gleaming entrance, Emma smoothed her skirt and touched up her lipstick. She'd thrown on her emergency blazer kept in her office, but underneath she still wore the casual silk blouse she'd changed into after hours. The concierge directed her to Ballroom B. When she pushed open the heavy doors, Emma stopped short. The vast ballroom was empty except for one table. Alexander Cole sat alone, a bottle of Chateau Margaux open beside him. 2 place settings gleamed under the dimmed crystal chandeliers. "Where are the investors?" Emma asked, confusion evident. Alexander stood, impossibly tall in his tailored tuxedo. There are no investors, not tonight. I don't understand. He gestured to the chair across from him. Have dinner with me, Emma. Is this a joke? Her voice betrayed her bewilderment. After 2 years of strictly professional interactions, this sudden shift felt surreal. I assure you, I rarely joke. His expression remained serious, but something in his eyes had softened. Consider it an apology for the other day. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm the one who dropped ... personal items on your desk. A hint of a smile touched his lips. That incident made me realize something. For 2 years, I've maintained professional distance. Perhaps unnecessarily so. Emma approached the table cautiously. This is highly irregular, Mr. Cole. Alexander, he corrected. And yes, it is. But I've built my career on calculated risks. As she took her seat, the waiter appeared with seafood appetizers. You planned this, she realized. I did. He poured her wine. The moment you walked out of my office, I knew I'd made a mistake letting you leave. Emma's heart raced. This was dangerous territory, her career, her reputation, her carefully constructed professional image. Why now? She asked. Because life is unpredictable, he replied. As your sister's situation reminds us, sometimes we need something unexpected to shake us out of our routines. The candlelight reflected in his eyes as he added quietly, sometimes we need to drop pretenses along with the underwear. The private dining experience with Alexander became the first of many encounters that blurred the lines between professional and personal. For 6 weeks, they navigated a secret relationship dinners at exclusive restaurants with private entrances. Weekends at his secluded Hamptons estate, conversations that stretched until dawn. Yet at the office, nothing changed. Alexander remained the demanding CEO, Emma the dedicated director of international acquisitions. No one suspected that the man, who critiqued her presentations by day, whispered affections against her skin by night. You're distracted, observed Mia, Emma's assistant. As they prepared for the quarterly board meeting, Emma shuffled her papers. Just focused on the presentation? It's more than that. You've been different lately. Mia studied her. Happier. Emma deflected with a smile. The Singapore merger is going well. In truth, she was happier than she'd been in years. Alexander had revealed himself to be thoughtful and surprisingly vulnerable beneath his controlled exterior. He'd shared stories of his childhood with distant parents, his early business failures, his fears of never finding someone who wanted him for more than his wealth. That evening, Alexander's driver took them to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. After dinner, he seemed unusually tense. What's wrong? Emma asked as they stood by the glass balustrade, the city lights twinkling below. The board meeting tomorrow, he began. Mason is pushing to send someone else to handle the final Singapore negotiations. Emma's stomach tightened. Who? James Peterson. Her blood ran cold. James can't handle it. He doesn't understand the cultural sensitivities. Alexander's eyes fixed on the horizon. That's not why Mason wants him there. Then why? Because Mason knows about us, Emma. Alexander turned to her. He threatened to expose our relationship to the board unless I agree to his demands. Emma gripped the railing. How did he find out? The hotel in Tokyo. Apparently, we weren't as discreet as we thought. Panic rose in her chest. Everything she'd worked for could unravel. This could ruin my career. Everyone will think I slept my way to the top. I won't let that happen, Alexander said firmly. You can't control what people think. Her voice cracked. I've spent 8 years building my reputation. If this gets out, then we face it together. He took her hands. Unless ... Unless what? His expression darkened. Unless you want to end this now, before tomorrow's meeting. The choice hung between them, her career, or their relationship. What Emma didn't tell him was that there was more at stake than he knew, a secret she'd been keeping for 2 weeks now, confirmed by a discreet doctor's appointment yesterday. She was pregnant. Emma arrived at the board meeting early, her mind racing with contingency plans. She'd barely slept, her conversation with Alexander replaying endlessly. They'd parted without resolution, both needing time to think. The pregnancy changed everything. She hadn't told Alexander, couldn't tell him, while their professional future hung in the balance. At 35, this unexpected child was both terrifying and precious to her. But how could she build a family amid corporate scandal? Board members filtered in, including Mason Hughes, whose smug expression made Emma's skin crawl. Alexander arrived last, his face an impassive mask as he took his seat at the head of the table. "Before we begin," Alexander announced, "I'd like to address the Singapore merger." Mason leaned forward. "Actually, I have thoughts on that. I believe James Peterson should lead the final negotiations." "On what grounds?" Alexander's voice remained calm. "Experience, of course." Mason's smile didn't reach his eyes. "And perhaps to avoid any conflicts of interest." The room grew tense. Emma maintained her professional composure despite her racing heart. "If you're implying something, Mason, say it directly." Alexander's tone was glacial. Mason glanced around the table. "I believe Ms. Wilson's relationship with you compromises her objectivity." A murmur rippled through the room. Emma felt all eyes turned to her. "That's a serious accusation," said Diane Porter, the company's longest-serving board member. Emma rose from her seat, her decision made. "If I may address the board." Alexander gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Yes, Mr. Cole and I have begun a personal relationship," she stated clearly. Gasps echoed around the table. "However, this developed after my appointment to the Singapore project, not before." Mason's triumphant expression faltered as she continued. "Nevertheless, I understand the concerns about conflict of interest." Emma squared her shoulders. "That's why I've prepared this." She distributed folders to each board member. "This is my resignation, effective immediately after the Singapore merger concludes. I believe in finishing what I start. The merger will proceed with complete transparency, with all decisions documented and approved by the full executive committee." Alexander's jaw tightened, his eyes revealing his shock. This wasn't what they discussed. Diane Porter studied the resignation letter, then looked up. "This seems unnecessary, Miss Wilson. Many companies have policies for disclosing relationships." "With respect, Miss Porter, I've built my career on integrity. I won't allow anyone to question that." Emma's gaze flicked to Mason. "Not even those with personal agendas." "What agenda?" Mason sputtered. "Perhaps the same one that led you to short Coal Enterprises stock last quarter?" Alexander interjected, sliding a document toward the center of the table. "Interesting timing, just before trying to derail our most profitable merger." The boardroom erupted in chaos. Mason's face drained of color as his financial dealings became the new focus of attention. In the commotion, Emma slipped out, one hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. Emma stood on the balcony of her apartment, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in hues of amber and gold. 3 weeks had passed since the board meeting. The Singapore merger had closed successfully yesterday, her final act as Director of International Acquisitions. Her resignation would take effect tomorrow. She'd already cleared her office, leaving behind 8 years of memories and achievements. Pregnancy was still her secret, though she'd begun researching obstetricians and birthing centers. At 12 weeks, she'd soon need to tell people, starting with Alexander. Their relationship had been strained since the board meeting. He'd respected her decision to handle the merger independently, limiting their interactions to necessary business matters. They hadn't spoken privately since that day. The doorbell rang, startling her from her thoughts. When she opened it, Alexander stood in the hallway, his usual tailored suit replaced by casual jeans and a sweater. "May I come in?" he asked. Emma stepped aside, suddenly conscious of her simple dress and bare feet. "I received your final merger report," he said, standing awkwardly in her living room. "Exemplary work, as always. Thank you." The formality between them felt wrong after everything they'd shared. "Why didn't you tell me about your resignation plans before the meeting?" he finally asked, the question that had clearly been haunting him. "Because you would have tried to stop me." Emma met his gaze. "And I needed to make that decision for myself. I've been respecting your space," he continued, "but I can't accept your resignation. You don't have a choice. It's done. What if I offered you something else instead?" Alexander stepped closer. "Not a job, a partnership." Emma's breath caught. "What kind of partnership?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the permanent kind. "Alexander, let me finish." His voice was uncharacteristically nervous. "I know this seems sudden, but when you stood up in that boardroom, willing to sacrifice everything you'd built rather than compromise your integrity, I realized something." He opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald-cut diamond. "I realized I want to build a life with you, Emma, not just stolen moments between meetings." Tears filled her eyes. "There's something you should know first." Worry crossed his face. "What is it?" Emma took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "We're already building something together." Alexander's expression transformed from confusion to wonder. "You're pregnant?" She nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "I found out right before the board meeting. I was going to tell you, but then everything happened with Mason. Alexander pulled her into his arms, his own eyes glistening. "This changes everything." "Does it?" she whispered against his chest. He pulled back to look at her. "Yes, it makes me even more certain." He sank to one knee, still holding the ring. "Emma Wilson, will you marry me? Not because of the baby, but because I've never met anyone who challenges me, inspires me, and understands me the way you do." Emma laughed through her tears. "This is definitely not how I expected things to go when I dropped that underwear in your office. Is that a yes?" he asked, hope shining in his eyes. She pulled him to his feet. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger and sealed their commitment with a kiss, Emma reflected on how life's most mortifying moments sometimes led to its greatest joys. From dropped underwear to a dropped knee, some mistakes were destiny in disguise.